Hi Jo, hi Rosie, hi Nicola.
Hi.
Hi, good evening.
Hello and hello everybody. Welcome to another one of our panel discussions. So for people who haven't watched them before, Writing Around the Kids project is for mothers of young children to connect with writing creatively. We've worked with brilliant groups of women in Crawley and Littlehampton, and we're currently working with a fantastic group of women in Hastings in partnership with Hastings Museum and New Writing South. Both Sam and I, as writers and mothers ourselves, and we began the project having recognised in our own lives how difficult it is to forge creative time for yourself. So my name's Anna Jefferson. I'm a playwright and novelist. I've written for stage and screen since 2005, and I've had 2 books published, Winging It and Nailing It, both with Orion, and I'm currently working on my 3rd book.
Hi, my name's Sam Johnson. I'm a freelance writer and I've got an MA in creative writing from the University of Brighton. I've been facilitating creative writing workshops since 2017. And I've got poetry published in a couple of anthologies, and I've had work in the Brighton Fringe Festival. And I'm very slowly writing my first novel.
We are delighted to welcome you tonight to our Writing Motherhood panel discussion with 3 exceptional female writers who have kindly agreed to share with us their experiences of what it is to be a writer.
So I'd like to welcome Jo Clegg, first of all. Jo's brief stint as a stand-up comic ended when a promoter told her she was really funny until she got on stage. After 10 years as a producer in TV and radio comedy, Jo became a scriptwriter. She writes for children's TV shows including BAFTA and Emmy-awarded Hey Duggee. Her first novel, The Summer Holiday, features difficult-to-remove wetsuits, a weaponised macaroni cheese, adequacy issues, comparison, overpacking, and regrettable impulsive acts. She lives in London with her family. Hi, Jo.
Hello.
And I would like to welcome Nicola to the panel. Nicola Gill lives in London with her husband and 2 sons. At the age of 5, when all the other little girls wanted to be ballet dancers, she decided she wanted to be an author. Her ballet teacher was very relieved. Nicola is author of The Neighbours and We Are Family. Welcome, Nicola.
And last but definitely not least, I'd like to welcome Rosie Walker. Rosie is the author of 2 novels, The House Fire in 2022 and Secrets of a Serial Killer 2020, both published by HarperCollins. Rosie lives in Edinburgh with her husband Kevin, daughter Elsie, and their dog Bella. She has a master's in creative writing from the University of Edinburgh and an undergraduate degree in psychology from Lancaster University. She is currently working on her 3rd novel. Hi, Rosie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So just to get things started this evening, we've asked each of our writers to do a short reading for us this evening. So if we can start with you, Jo, if you just give us a quick intro to what you're going to read and then read for us. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Okay, so this is from my novel, my first novel, The Summer Holiday. And it's about Claire. She has to go on holiday again with the family of her husband's best friend. It's sort of assumed that she and the woman in the other family, are really, really good friends and really like each other, and it's kind of true, but they wouldn't choose each other in the real world, and actually Honor makes her feel really inadequate. She just finds everything very easy to do, and she's very slick and quick and decisive and alpha, and Claire just isn't any of those things. So I'm going to read a little bit from the part where the holiday is coming. Claire's failed to get them out of it. She's spent lots of time learning new skills, improving things that she feels she needs to improve. She's somewhat impulsively bought a new car it really can't afford. So is going for an interview for more hours at the school that she works at. And it's really important that she gets this job. Claire did her makeup and put on a white shirt and black wide linen trousers that were a step up from her usual school outfits, and with shaking hands put in a pair of earrings that Mrs. Gunnison had complimented once. She's the head. It was already hot and set to be hotter, so she twisted her hair from her face and fixed it in place. I want this job, she told her reflection. I need it and I will be invincible. Her keys and purse were in her bag on the hook in the hall. She left the house with loads of time to spare, having factored in contingency for emergencies. Factored in contingency. This is who she was now. If nothing else came out of her Be Better Before Bodlow campaign, she'd smashed setting off on time, and no one could take that away from her. Rather than arrive at the interview too early and get more anxious, she went into the charity shop to kill some time. She was flipping through a book of ways to be calm when the shop assistant brought out a wetsuit and hung it from a hanger on a rattan room divider. Claire stared at it. It looked like the shape of her body. How much is the wetsuit? $24.99. It's a winter one, nearly new. Woman said it should cost just shy of 300. Can I try it on at home and bring it back if it's not right? The woman narrowed her eyes. You've asked me that before. She had asked that before, and whether they'd hold something. That had been a no too. Claire looked at the time and smiled. She'd factored in a contingency, and here was a sort of emergency. Okay, I'll try it now. She pulled the changing room curtain. The wetsuit was nothing like the baggy short sleeve suit she got the kids from the supermarket. Everything about it, the trim and seams, the zip which purred down smooth and even, was excellent quality. She took off her shirt and trousers. When they'd last been in Bodlow, swimming, even just bobbing around in the water had been out of the question because it had been so frigging cold. She'd sat and watched Honor crawling back and forth, emerging endorphined up and energised. Claire clambered into the wetsuit, coaxing up her legs, smoothing and persuading and wriggling in her arms and torso. She felt behind her for the zip cord and pulled and arched her shoulders and inched it home. She backed to the wall and strode in slow-mo towards the mirror. Oh yeah, look at me striding into the sea. So what if Honor was tough enough not to need a wetsuit? It was like a second, thicker skin. Maybe she wouldn't take it off all fortnight. She chuckled to herself, then checked the time. Contingency was definitely over. She reached up and pulled down the zip and yanked at the wetsuit, tussling, heating up immediately, wetly, as she wrenched herself back and forth like an escapologist's anxiety dream, tangling herself in the curtain. You having trouble? I'm fine, she called, sweat beading her lip. She checked her watch again. Her contingency was beyond over. She pulled the zip back up, buttoned her shirt and rolled the sleeves down over her wetsuited arms, put on her trousers and folded the legs of the wetsuit until they were hidden underneath. I'll keep it on, she said, swishing open the curtain, because people did say that about normal clothes. And that's the end. She has to run up the road to the interview and she gets extremely hot.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you, Jo. Thank you so much for sharing.
I was, can I just say, while we were waiting, I was re-editing the piece, like, you know, and I remembered, oh no, it's been published now. Can't.
I do that too.
So next, Nicola, could we hear an extract of your book? And again, if you could just give us, a brief kind of overview beforehand, that would be fantastic.
Okay, so I'm reading to you from We Are Family. So We Are Family is basically a story about two sisters, Laura and Jess, and they may be sisters, but they are very, very different people. So Laura is very laid back. She's laid back about everything. She's laid back about her work. She's a laid back parent. And frankly, she'd, you know, quite like to take to her bed with a block of cheese most days. And then she's got this sort of uber perfect sister who's an influencer, always immaculate, always seems to get everything right. Kids are perfectly behaved, that type of sister. And they don't see a lot of each other, but when their mother dies, they're kind of thrown together for the first time in years. And the book is about how that goes, really. So I'm going to read you, it's quite near the beginning. And Laura is on her way to the undertaker's, where Jess is already there because Jess is always early for everything. Laura raced down the road, sweaty and agitated. She could not believe she was late for the appointment at the funeral director's. And if being late to the hospice hadn't been her fault, well, this time it was definitely on her. It was just nothing had gone right this morning. Billy couldn't find Captain America. She couldn't find that pile of clean t-shirts she'd folded the other day. She really had to tidy up this flat. Then Billy had knocked over a whole bottle of milk just as she was trying to get some breakfast into him. She must have shouted Billy much louder than she meant to, because John appeared in the kitchen doorway, rubbing his eyes. I knocked over the milk, Billy said, and Mummy shouted at me. His lower lip wobbled. John kissed the top of his head. Mummy didn't really shout. Now eat your Cheerios while I clear up the mess. I don't like Cheerios. They're a superhero's favourite cereal. Billy looked unconvinced but started eating. Laura had stood at the kitchen sink with her back to them, taking a long, deep breath as tears welled up in her eyes. John stepped over the river of milk and put his arms around her. Shh, no use crying over spilt milk. 20 minutes later, Laura was shivering and pulling her coat tighter as she stepped out of the house. It was one of those grim January days where it seemed as if it would never be warm again, that maybe the sun had just forgotten how to shine. She glanced at her watch, noting that she might still make it to the funeral directors in time if everything went like clockwork. And as luck would have it, she could see her bus arriving as she got near to the bus stop. She broke into a run. A large man going in the opposite direction barreled into her, elbowing her hard in the chest just as the bus pulled away. Great. She bet Jess was there already. I'm quite early, she'd be saying. I'll just sit here and catch up on a few things. Like she had anything to catch up on. She'd have been up since 5:30 a.m, micro-scheduling the day ahead. She'd once told Laura that if she didn't make herself get up at 5:30, the day just ran away from her. Laura, who routinely hit the snooze button until about 7.5 minutes before she had to get Billy to school and herself to work, had been utterly appalled. What normal person routinely gets up at that hour? In her book, it wasn't even morning. 6 minutes until the next bus. 6 minutes. Laura took a discreet swig of Gaviscon and hoped she wouldn't spontaneously combust. When Laura got off the bus, she immediately started running again. Was it normal to be out of breath quite so quickly? She needed to lose some weight and get fit. Jess ran 4 times a week. Of course she did. Thinking about her sister made Laura speed up a little despite the wheezing. It was nearly 11:20, and she knew Jess would have started the meeting without her. In fact, she may well have their mother buried by now. Time is money. Finally, the funeral parlour loomed into view. Robert Butler and Sons, a family firm. Was this supposed to make death feel cosy and unthreatening? It was sandwiched between a shoe shop and a convenience store, and Laura couldn't help but notice that there was a huge poster for The Walking Dead just round the corner. Robert Butler, a rotund man said, proffering a bear-like and slightly sweaty hand. I'm so sorry for your loss. Was he sorry? This was his business, for goodness sake. If people didn't die, he didn't eat. No. She was being unfair. He could be sorry and not sorry in different ways. Besides, someone had to do this job. She must stop being so weird. Robert ushered Laura into a small, murkily lit room where her immaculate-looking sister was already arranged elegantly on the sofa. Jess, who hated people being late, glanced at her watch in a move so classically passive-aggressive that Laura had to resist the urge to chuck the half-drunk green tea her sister was holding all over her. And was that mum's necklace Jess was wearing, the one Dad had bought her? Blimey, she hadn't wasted much time getting her hands on that. Laura was determined she was not going to apologise for being late, or chuck green tea at anyone, or wrench necklaces from their throats. May I get you something to drink? Robert said. Yes, coffee, please. How do you take it? Milk and 2 sugars, please. I've given up sugar, Jess said, and I feel like a different person. Try giving up being smug, Laura thought irritably.
Fab, thank you, Nicola. So, Rosie, you're going to give us a reading as well now. Can you just give us a quick intro and then read, please?
Yep, I'm going to read from my second novel, The House Fire. And as an intro to the book, I'm just going to read you this the back, otherwise I'll give away stuff because I don't trust myself. A tired old seaside town, a derelict mansion in the woods, and a bundle of love letters that mask a dark story. When Jamie's documentary investigation gets too close to uncovering the truth behind a series of deadly arson attacks that tormented Abbeywick in the 1980s, her family might be the ones who pay the price. But for her younger sister Cleo, the secrets Jamie uncovers have the potential to get exactly what Cleo wants: to remove her mum's toxic new husband from their lives forever. All it takes is one spark to send everything up in smoke. And I'm going to read today the prologue, which is in the voice of the arsonist. I think you can sense a theme here. A lot of things are going to get set on fire. The first time I saw him hit her, I laughed. Not a normal laugh, of course. It wasn't funny. This was an expulsion of noise which erupted from my mouth with the shock. I watched through the gap in the cupboard door from my hiding place below the stairs, huddled alongside the broom, the mop, the carpet sweeper. His punch didn't make the booming drum sound that punches make on TV in the black and white fistfights of westerns or the technicolor gore of primetime bar bust-ups. The sound in real life was more meaty, like someone slapping a steak onto a kitchen counter with a wet thud. It wasn't the first time. I'd heard them before, through the floorboards after they thought I was asleep. His voice raised, staccato shouts. Her voice light, pleading, "Don't, please don't." And then a scuffle, a shout, a whimper, and then silence. But this was the first time I saw. She fell to the ground like her bones had shattered. Then she pushed herself across the floor, trying to get away from him. But while she crawled, her hand raised to her jaw, she didn't look at him. She looked at me, where my eyes stared out at her from the shadows beneath the stairs. She was more afraid of what I had seen than she was of him hitting her again. It mattered more to her that I saw it than that it happened. That was the scariest thing I had ever known. He followed her gaze, saw my stare, shrugged. And now that I'd seen it happen once, it was like the lock opened on a canal, water pouring through, no way to stop it. He'd opened the sluice for it to happen again and again. Hiding it didn't matter anymore. After the punch, he stood there, flexing his fingers open and closed. He rubbed his red knuckles. "Get up." She barely flinched. She was so used to it. "Don't say a word," he howled at me. "I don't want to hear a sound from you." I pulled back from my spy hole, away from her cowering form, him towering over her. But I looked once more, pressed my nose to the wood. I watched him light a match for his pipe, still standing over her. He dropped the match, still lit. It spun as it fell through the air, the fall nearly extinguishing the flame, but not quite. Then he pushed the old kerosene oil lamp off the sideboard. He turned away, didn't watch it smash to the ground, but I did. I saw as the cheap polyester of her housecoat caught fire. I smelled the melting fibres. Embers skittered and skidded, consuming the fabric like the incoming tide rushing across the shore. She didn't make a sound. He taught her not to. She rolled away from the shattered lamp, wrapped herself with the hearthrug before her whole coat caught alight. She ran a hand down her singed hair, and then she quietly, calmly walked to the kitchen to finish cooking dinner. He sat down and puffed on his pipe, which covered the smell of burnt hair and fabric. "Don't say a word," he said to me, and I didn't say a word. But silently I vowed I would kill him as soon as I knew how.
Oh, that was brilliant. Thank you, Rosie. Thank you, all three of you. Yeah, it's fantastic to just get a flavour of your work, and also the kind of like the breadth of work from the writers on the panel as well. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to have some quick fire questions, and then we're going to get on to some questions that some of our groups have put forward. So yeah, over to you, Sam.
So if I'll kick off with you again, Rosie, sorry. Just the very classic question of what would be your desert island book?
I think my desert island book would be A Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry, because it's 850 pages of cowboy adventures and it just doesn't ever get boring.
Brilliant, thank you. And Jo, you?
I started to write that down the title, and when you said cowboy, my pen just automatically stopped, and I don't know why, because I love Brokeback Mountain, but that's really good. So you've gone for length. I was thinking that I'd go for something that had taken a really long time to write, on the basis that it would be worth massive rereading. So I think I'll go for maybe Donna Tartt, probably the Goldfinch, which I for a long time called the Chaffinch. So I have to be really careful if I'm ever about to say it. I think the Chaffinch might be shorter and maybe not quite as good, but yeah, the Goldfinch.
Brilliant, thank you. And Nicola, how about you?
Oh, interesting. So first of all, this is the cruelest question ever, because it's literally being asked to, pick one of your kids. So I also was going to pick Donna Tartt. I was going to pick The Secret History, which is one of my favourite books ever. But I think I decided in the end that I'm on the desert island. I need some laughs. So I'm going to pick Catherine Heine, Standard Deviation.
Brilliant, thanks.
Okay, and my question to you is, which author would be your star guest at a dinner party? So, Jo, if we kick off with you.
Well, can I make it lunch, please? Because
lunch is fine.
Otherwise, then I can really indulge. I'm not very good at eating in the evenings. Okay, I would like a series of lunches, please. And could I have one with Richmond Crompton, who wrote the Just William stories? Because I love William and the Outlaws so much. And can I have one with Leanne Moriarty and one with Lily King, who's written Writers and Lovers, which is brilliant. I must read some more of her books. But also, I can just one more, which is with Debbie Johnson and Leah Louie, because I really love their emotion and the feelings that they bring out in their books, and I feel they may be ever so slightly easier to get hold of because they're already they're alive. And they're in England. So.
Would you have them all at the same lunch, or would you have them subsequently?
No, I mean, if you're genuinely offering to fund this, then I'll pay for the other. I'll just take the one and I'll pay for the other ones. But I think it would be overwhelming. I think it would. I think I'm increasingly better at one-on-one. Yeah. It may be a post-pandemic thing, or I'm a bit of an introvert, so I fill up and get overwhelmed very quickly and then have to scuttle off. And I want my pudding, so yeah.
You've gone for a series of lunches as opposed to one dinner guest.
Yeah.
Well, I like that as well. It gives you options. So, Rosie, who would your dinner/lunch guest be?
Well, one of the authors I did consider, same as Jo, was Leanne Moriarty, because I think she's a brilliant writer. But then Gillian McAllister took her place at the table, because she is just an amazing writer, and I don't understand how she plots her novels, but I need to talk to her and ask her. I just read a proof copy of her new one that's coming out in May called Wrong Place, Wrong Time, and it's written, it happens backwards, and so everything happens from day zero and then moves back in time, but you learn the unraveling of the mystery as you're reading forwards. And I just felt like that little brain exploding emoji for the whole book. I was just like, how is this happening? How has she done this? And I really would love to meet her and understand how she plots, because it's brilliant.
And also she writes she's frequently got a new book out, and they're all fantastic as well. So to be able to write such brilliant novels but at pace as well, maybe when she's round at your house, could you ask her that from me?
Definitely.
Nicola, who would you have at your dinner party?
I am going to have Anne Tyler, please, because I want to ask her how she has managed to write so many books over such a long period of time, and they're just consistently wonderful, because I think that we all need to know that. So what's the secret to being able to, keep turning out, I think, a book a year for 20 years, and they're all fabulous?
These are no pressure dinner parties, are there? Our guests are going to be very relaxed. We're not going to be putting them on the spot. So
we're going to be fine.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Well, good luck with your dinner parties. They all sound like great guests.
I think that kind of leads on quite nicely into the first question that I've got as well. So we'll stay with you, Nicola, and you can start off with this. But sort of the first question is about your writing routine. But it's like, how do you make your writing happen in the day-to-day stuff and having the children and so on and so on?
Okay, so I have a day job as well. So I have to be quite strict to make sure that the writing happens. And the way I do this is getting up very early before anyone else and writing there then. So before anyone else gets up and before work. And luckily, I'm sort of a morning person. I'm one of those annoying people who's annoyingly sort of chirpy in the morning. But that's fine, because by 8:30 p.m. I'm in my pajamas and can't really talk to anyone. So I might actually need to go with Joe's suggestion earlier and go for lunches, not dinners, actually. Now I come to think of it, it was a good call. But the morning writing is what works for me. And the thing I would say, and I really try to stick to this quite rigidly, is that even if you don't think you've got enough time, even if it's just 10 minutes, it keeps your book in your mind, it's worth doing. So that's as close as I get to writing advice.
And do you write every day? Do you write Saturdays and Sundays as well? Or is it a bit different?
So I used to, and then I've decided that I have to have one day off a week, otherwise I'm just unpleasant.
What's your day?
Yeah.
Which day do you take off?
Generally Sunday. And even sometimes when I want to go really mad, really wild, I take Saturday and Sunday off. Depends how near I am to a deadline and how panicked I am. And how well it's going. You know what it's like. You know, sometimes you're doing quite well and you think, yeah, I can have the weekend. And sometimes you think, there's no way they're going to have 80,000 words by whenever.
Brilliant, thank you. Rosie, is that similar for you? Are you an early bird?
I'm in the process currently of trying to establish a routine, because my daughter she's just turned 1. So for the past year, I've been on maternity leave from my day job. And every time she went down for a nap, it was like, I could sit and I could watch Love Island or Married at First Sight Australia and have a much needed rest, or I could write. And so when she was on more than one nap a day, it was like one nap could be the writing and one nap could be the Married at First Sight Australia. And now the naps have got smaller and smaller, and now it's only 1. And sometimes she still wakes up after like 40 minutes, and that's not enough time. And meanwhile, when she's awake, she's currently in that stage where she's like sticking her fingers in all the sockets and trying to pull things over on herself. And so I got to the point the other day where I was like, right, I actually need proper writing time. Like I can't just like scramble it around naps and like tell myself that I'm going to be able to do it like this, because it's not possible. You can't. If people have found how they can do it with their children in the house and not asleep, I would love to know, but I have not been able to do it. So today my daughter went for a taster session with a childminder, and she's going to go to a childminder for a few, I think it's 3 very short, like few hour bursts a week, which is when I'm going to be doing my writing. So 3 short bursts, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then possibly a little bit in the mornings before my husband starts work, while he's giving my daughter breakfast. I'll be able to get another little snatched chunk of time. So like Nicola said, even 10 minutes here and there, you can write a book doing that, and that's probably what I'm going to end up doing.
Yeah,
I think it's extraordinary how you can use that. Maybe pre-children, you could kind of while away an hour and just, you know, and maybe free time a little bit more. But when you're, for example, these 3 short periods when you've got childcare, it's extraordinary what you can get done in that time, isn't it? I think it makes you superhuman. Can I just put and say as well to people who are listening? We've culminated a lot of questions that we've had from our writing around the kids groups. If people who are listening as well would like to ask a question, please can you stick it in the Q&A, and we'll try and get to the questions as we're talking. So stick your questions in the Q&A, and Sam and I will try and ask the writers as many as possible.
So Joe, we were talking a little bit before we came on live about deadlines and, you know, how they motivate you or don't motivate you, but sort of with the same question in mind about how you make your writing happen.
Well, I'm like Nicola. I'm a get straight to it. I mean, I kind of, you know, I'm going up the stairs with the sort of mega coffee and my pajamas, and got to do it really, because I know that if I put it, I mean, I make my own schedule, if you like, because I'm a script writer as well, and it, sometimes it'll be like today, I have to finish this Hey Duggee outline, do that, send it by midday or what have you. Then I went to my rewrites on my second novel, but mostly, in the larger scheme of things, before I got published, it was novel first in my free time, from 6:30 or 7 till 9 or what have you. Just to go back to, I mean, my kids are older now, and I'm grateful every day. One is at sixth form and one is away at university. The one is at sixth form is often not there. There are lots of free periods, and then I'll realise she's here, and because she'll say, "Can I borrow your blah blah?" So I do get it, but my goodness, it's different. What I would say is that the thing about snatching 10 minutes, I think it is a bit like fitness. If you build it up, or it's like a tap that and its source comes from miles away. But if you've drawn up the water over some time, if you've been able to spend that time to kind of build up what it is that you're writing about, if it's whether it's memoir or a short story or a poem, whatever. If it's in you, and you've pulled it up, and you've pulled up all the silt and you're on, you're in a rhythm with it, you can just turn, and that's good water. I think you have to go. For me, I have to go be there every day. One day, not okay, that's okay. If I miss 2 days, I just get the fear. I get the doubt. It's too easy to go for another day. So it really is. It's it's one of those things. If it's important to you to kind of go, how do I make that 10 minutes, 15 minutes? I'll be hairy and unfit, but I will be writing my short story or whatever it is. I say that like I spend a lot of time. I think people spend a lot of time removing their hair. I don't know why I said that. I meant it as a catch-all. A catch-all for everything.
It's a great analogy.
Food shop.
But with your time as well, do you, like, when you've kind of identified a block of time, how do you use it? Do you think, right, I'm going to sit down, I've got to write? I mean, what would you kind of measure as success in terms of how well you use your time? Is it a word count? Is it like a chapter? Like how do you use your time once you're sitting there?
Who are you asking?
Anybody who'd like to, yeah. So Rosie, like when you're sitting with your, or what do you think will happen once you've got your hour? Have you got a plan?
I do. Well, I'm a planner. So I've got a chapter plan for the novel that I'm writing, and it's quite meticulous because I try and be very organized so that I have no excuse to give up. So I can't turn around and be like, well, I don't know what's going to happen next, because I have this extremely detailed spreadsheet that will stop me being a quitter. So I'll probably open the spreadsheet or open up the document that I'm working on and check what I last wrote the day before. And I usually, what I do when I finish writing for the day, I'll helpfully write myself a little note about what I intend to put on the page next. And then I'll try very hard to just launch straight into it and just write as fast as my fingers will let me, get the words on the page. And while I'm doing this, I'll tell myself, it doesn't matter if they're terrible. It doesn't matter what you're writing, as long as you are getting something down. And to an extent, that means that I can make the most of my hour, and I don't get distracted, and I don't end up procrastinating as much as sometimes. But other times it doesn't work. And like what I did while I was in the first few months after my daughter was born, I did that blind, like, I've got to get a novel down, I've got to write it. And I wrote 47,000 words, and then I stopped, and I was like, I've gone in the wrong direction. And I've been so fixated on getting the words on the page and that I can edit it later, and first drafts are always meant to be crap, that I hadn't let myself realize that I'd missed something when I was plotting, and I needed to go right back to the beginning and replan.
God, that must have been a tough position to be in as well, especially when you've got way over half of your book down as well.
Yeah, it was. But then at the same time, it didn't feel right when I was writing it. You know, when you get that feeling, you're just like, oh, I've got to write this book again, and I don't like it. And if you feel like that, it's likely the readers might as well. And so I think I knew for a long time before I like faced it that it wasn't working. And because I was so fixated on getting the words down, and because I was so busy mentally like keeping a baby alive, I didn't notice that like I would have done in a normal situation.
Yeah. Have you had that, Nicola, where you've got to a point in your book and thought, actually, I think I've taken the wrong fork?
Yes, I think that's what's laughingly known as my process, actually. I think I do that sort of almost habitually with every book. But, you know, it's really interesting because just listening to Rosie speaking, I mean, my kids are also older now, they're uni age. So, you know, I have much more control over my time. Although I will just say that any mother who thinks that when their kids grow up, they're not needed anymore is mistaken. It's just a different set of requests and needs. But yeah, for sure, when they're sort of really tiny and, you know, what have you, it's really, really hard to make the time. But yes, I've definitely thrown away 40, 50,000 words before. But I like to tell myself that nothing's ever wasted. I'm not quite sure that's true, but it makes me feel better anyway. And I think you do sort of learn something, sometimes writing it the wrong way before you then go back and fix it. Maybe. Don't know.
Do
you have that, Jo?
Yeah, I did exactly that. And I steamed out. Makes it actually literally sound like manure. I quite liked it. I wrote, let's say wrote about 50,000 words of an idea for my second book while I was waiting for feedback, and then the feedback was just kind of like, afterwards I just kind of thought, oh God, you know, why how has that happened? I know what I'm supposed to be writing. I know the genre that I've been contracted in. Why is this darkness crept in? You know, it's just, you know, where's the uplifting, you know, fun, what have you? So yeah, no, I'm definitely with Nicola on the kind of, you know, quite a lot of, but the thing is, I don't know, I mean, it's brilliant. When Rosie mentions spreadsheets and meticulous plans, I just kind of think that to me would be a character that I'd made up if someone was talking in that way. It's like, you know, I'm like Claire, you know, my character, you know, who doesn't factor in contingencies, never knows where her keys are. I went to Sainsbury's without my debit card. Anyway, but I just to go back to the sitting down and what to do. I think I used to always think that people were endlessly writing 80,000 words and then, you know, done, and then writing 80,000 words and done. There's an awful lot of sitting, I think, or there is with me anyway, going, does this have to happen? Why have I put it here? Does it have to happen before that? And, you know, if I spend 20 minutes doing that and at the end I go, yes, because la la la, and I stick it on a post-it note and put it on the wall, that is success. I think a successful 20 minutes of writing, a successful hour of writing, it can be in your head and it can be in a notebook, and it could be a sketch of the layout of the main character's hair salon. It could be a sketch of the allotment that the, you know, romantic, you know, the love interest has. And let me tell you, that is a top tip. It's really important to nail the specifics of a location, even in the crappiest sketch, because you will forget, or you will have to change it, and to have a visual reference is really, really good. So yeah, that's writing. I mean, or if it's not, then I'm regularly doing it entirely wrong. Impossible.
We had one of our writers a couple of panels ago who built a whole village out of Lego to help her map her thing. So yeah, really get that a lot. The specific.
This was a crime fiction as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So she was trying to work out who was where, so that there was kind of continuity within the murder or whatever had happened.
It wasn't Victoria Dowd, was it?
Yes, it was.
Oh, yeah, she loves her Lego murder scenes.
Brilliant. So I've just spotted a question that was about whether you're a planner or a pantser. So I guess we know Victoria. Sorry, we know that Rosie is very much a planner, and we know that Jo is very much not. How about you, Nicola? Are you somewhere in the middle, or?
I am somewhere in the middle, conveniently enough. That's good, isn't it? It's like we've planned this. So I would describe myself as a pantser who's in reform. I'm a pantser who's turning myself into a planner. I am learning to plan more and more, hopefully, so I don't have to keep ditching, 40, 50,000 words. We will see how that goes. I think, to be honest, what I've kind of realized is that all writers plan, even if they don't think they do. So even if you write your sort of messy first draft without planning it at all, that's then your plan, because then you go back and you sort it out. So we're all planning, it's just a sort of different way of doing it. But my sort of, when I'm in a real panic at the beginning of a book, I know I'm in a panic because I start rereading or buying lots of books on how to write books. So, from Stephen King to anyone else I can find. And I think, oh my God, okay, let's plan it out doing Save the Cat. And I do it all like that. And I think, well, that's rubbish. And then I do plan it all out to whatever. And then I start writing and ignore all of it. So yeah, somewhere between the two, I would say.
That's really reassuring to hear about your how to write a novel kind of purchases as well, because I've done exactly the same. But also you can see the time of night when you end up making, I don't know about you, but mine will normally be kind of an Amazon purchase at about midnight where I can't sleep, and I think, God, if I just read this book, then it'll just make everything okay.
Yes. Well, I find it's like a really sort of tragic sort of symbol of my life, because I used to, buy, late night purchases would be some fabulous pair of shoes that I bought when I, had too much wine and been out too late. And now it's some terrible book on writing that's going to depress me completely and make me feel inadequate.
It's funny, I've begun to think that I sort of look at all the books that I read, and then I look at all the books about writing books, and there's a massive gender divide. So I'm reading and loving books by women, and then there are all these men telling me how to write, and I'm kind of like, fuck, hang on a minute. I mean, apart from the kind of excuse me, I'm really sorry, I swore, but the sort of lovely Anne Lamott and is it Natalie Goldberg, the ones who really sort of are more about bringing out what's in there, are wonderful. Although today I was reading John Truby's Anatomy of a Story, because I always seem to have one on the go or revisit one, and it was talking about the character web in Tootsie and how all the different characters, all their stories. I mean, it was, sometimes I'll read something and I'll go, how long have you been earning a living as a writer? Yeah. And this feels like an epiphany, and that's not, how have you managed to cobble it together for so long? I mean, you can know something, but when somebody says, look, they're all doing it this way, doing it that way, they're all part of the same theme, they're all there for the whole thing to be about how men treat women or whatever it is. And and it will just be quite profound. I mean, I think I've got a terrible memory, so I can read something or know something and then forget it, and then I get to learn it all over again when I read it in somebody else's book about writing. So I think that it's certainly valid and necessary for me to be reading about how to write the entire time.
Yeah. You've touched on something actually, which was one of the questions that one of our group had asked beforehand, which was about how do you make your characters feel real? And I know that you've all got very different novels, like Nicola, with your what do you do to make your characters feel real, fully formed people?
That's a really good question that I'm not sure I really know fully the answer to, because I think you start out with the core of the character in your mind, if you like, the sort of heart of them. But then they develop as you start writing and they become known to you. It's almost, I'm sorry, I can hear myself and I'm hearing myself just thinking, God, you sound like one of those awful people. But anyway, let's just ignore that. I know I sound like one of the awful people, pretentious people, but it is like getting to know someone you meet in real life. It's like getting to know a friend. I think your characters do become more known to you as you go along and as you write. And I think that's when I really love writing, and when it becomes quite magical, when there's a point where your character's in a situation and you think, oh, I know exactly what she'd say, or I know exactly what she'd do. And that's or he, and that's a really lovely feeling. And for me, the characters that are, it's probably true for a lot of us, but the characters that are the best fun to write are the ones who do things that you as a person would never ever dream of doing. So in my first book, The Neighbours, there's a very outrageous sort of out of work actress called Cassie, who is just rude to everyone, insults everyone, says exactly what she thinks. And she was a joy to write, because all the things that I would never do, Cassie could do.
Yes, it's nice having that kind of alter ego, isn't it? Like,
it's very nice, yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Rosie? Because like, just thinking with, you know, if psychological thrillers and people who maybe like doing within your books aren't maybe necessarily how you would kind of live in and inhabit the world yourself. So how do you make your characters feel authentic?
So when I first started writing, I used to do little questionnaires, you know, what's her favorite color and things like that. And it very quickly, like, I would just write it down and then forget about it and never revisit it. Mainly, I think, because the characters would always appear in my mind kind of fully formed, possibly not as kind of complete people, but as I write, they would kind of present themselves to me and be there, and I wouldn't have to kind of consciously build them. And I do wonder if it's a bit like acting, you know, when like an actor will stand on the stage and they will mentally embody the character that they're playing. And I think when I'm writing, I do that, which makes me sound a little bit deranged, considering that we have serial killers and arsonists. But I think I'm sitting there thinking, you know, what would I do if I was this person? You know, how would I behave? And I think, worryingly, a lot of the characters are kind of different facets of my personality, or how I would behave was I that person. And hopefully not the horrible ones. I don't know where they come from, and they then disappear as soon as I finish writing a book. They're gone in my head, and I don't like carry around a serial killer in my head or anything. But yeah, I find it strange that I don't consciously build them and kind of do those little questionnaires anymore, and yet they are real people to me.
I wonder if doing the questionnaire is part of that, like Nicola was talking about, you know, is it necessary, is it part of my process to kind of do the thing and then start again. But I wonder sometimes whether you do, it's almost like sort of putting down compost or foundations or whatever. And I mean, not that it's essential, but it just you know, your writing self knows that it's done somehow, and so you can move on, and you know, and it will, you know, other things will open up about the character at that point. I
remember we used to do quite a lot in theatre of like hot seating characters. So you kind of put your character into a situation that might not be anything to do with the play or the novel or whatever it is that you're writing, but just kind of testing them and thinking, how would you react in this situation? I guess it's just another way of being able to inhabit that character without actually having to.
That's interesting. I've never heard of that before. So it's just putting them in an extreme situation, even if it's nothing to do with the story, just to see how they'd be.
Yeah, so in theatre you might have them sat in the middle of the stage, and then everybody else would ask questions of them, and so you then you're just constantly testing your character to think, if I was on that holiday, if I met that person, if I was forced to do this, how would I react? But yes, I guess it's just kind of a physical way of doing the questionnaire that you're talking about as well, Rosie. Yeah, it's interesting.
It's so good though, isn't it, to kind of go, what would she do, or how would she react if you're asking those questions, if you're writing a novel or a short story, and then I think it's a really good sign, rather than what happens next, or what can I make happen next, or or something dramatic's got to happen, so a car's going to kind of plow through the window. I mean, if you I've made my point. I won't do a lap of honour, as we call it in this.
Never heard of that either, but I think I do that all the time, the lap of honour.
I was going to say, I love that phrase. I'm going to say that to you all the time now.
Yeah.
God, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. We're absolutely whizzing through the time. So this is not necessarily the last question, but definitely one that I think people watching would want to get to, which is just about in terms of what advice you would give to someone who's starting out and who's maybe looking has something that they're maybe looking to get published and so on. So your experience of how you got to having a book published. I'm doing it now. Pick a question. Rosie, can we start with you?
I think it's a marathon, not a sprint, is probably the advice that I needed to hear when I first started out. And I think, especially when I first got an agent, and I'd be checking my emails every day, where's all this updates? I want some news, I want some information. And little did I know that sometimes it can be months before you get any kind of update or news. And being a writer is very much like a kind of a waiting game and almost a distracting game. You have to distract yourself with something new if you're waiting for something, like any kind of query response or submissions, anything like that. Just move on to the next thing and almost shelve whatever it is that you're waiting for, because if you focus on the thing you're waiting for, it's going to be a really, really tough journey.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm still on mute then. How about you, Nicola? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's great advice. And I think resilience is the most important thing for any writer, because it is really tough, and there's a lot of rejection, and you kind of just have to keep going. And I suppose the only thing that any of us as writers can control is the words on the page. So the closest I can get to sort of any actual writing advice is just to get your bum in the seat day after day and keep doing it and keep getting the words down, because everything else is a bit out of our control, really, and it's down to sort of agents and publishers and marketing and all kinds of weird things. But we can make sure that we make the book the best we possibly can. So yeah, that just showing up, and then just the resilience to keep going when you get knockbacks, because there isn't a writer, I've yet to meet a published writer who hasn't been rejected multiple times. So yeah, just keep on keeping on.
Can I just quickly say that another thing that I think is really key, really, really key. You can control the words on the page. That's absolutely true. But you can also do something to control your thoughts and your beliefs about yourself, about your writing, about what other people are thinking. Just if you can really get a hold of that, and just decide that if it doesn't feel good, maybe don't think it. Try and think about the work. Try and choose it. If you're not enjoying it, then find a way to enjoy it and make it meaningful. I think it's such a brilliant tool for mental good health. That but I think we do need to be really, really careful about thinking people aren't going to like it. They're reading it right now. They don't care, and they're all getting together and thinking, oh, who's going to tell her? It's so dreary. just I've worked so hard to kind of lighten up that kind of side of things, and it's really, really helped me.
And is that in how in real terms, how do you stop having those thoughts?
When I notice them, when I notice my mind searching for, I wonder if they've said, she won't be able to do it by then, she's really slow, or whatever it is, I just kind of go, how likely is that? doesn't, and does it matter? No, you know, I don't know. I just don't go down those rabbit warrens so much these days.
It's just popped into my head as you were saying it. It's like it's just that I used to say to the kids when they were a lot smaller and would be like starting to fight each other. I'd try and teach them this thing where they were saying, where you get them to go stop, back off, and I just felt like that's what you need to do in your head, isn't it? It's just like have a stop, back off.
Whoa, yeah.
Thanks, Nicola. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, it really made me think of, there's a great Amy Poehler quote, and she said that when she heard critical voices in her own head, she started saying, stop, don't talk to my friend like that. Yeah. And it's just a really good piece of advice to live by, actually, because the way we talk to ourselves, we would never talk to another human being like that. I mean, just that sort of internal monologue of, well, this is rubbish, you know, why are you even, but nobody's you never talk to a friend like that. You'd be encouraging and, you know, kind. And so I think that's good advice.
Brilliant.
Like that. And that feels like a really lovely place to end as well. Stop, don't talk to my friend like that. Thank you. Obviously we can't, we're on a webinar, so people can't kind of clap, so you can see them, but if we just kind of all give you a virtual clap. And huge thank you, Rosie, Nicola and Jo, for being such fantastic panelists. We have another panel our next one is coming up on the 19th of May. You can get tickets in advance now already through our website, so please do. As always, all of our panels are completely free to watch, but you do need to register in advance. And also, I should say, if you happen to be either in Crawley or Littlehampton, we have exhibitions of our Writing Around the Kids participants' work, and it's beautiful. So please to go into the museum to go and have a look. We should thank as well our partners, New Writing South, and also our funders, Arts Council England. And once again, can we just thank Nicola, Rosie and Jo for just being such brilliant panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.